Hi, it's Nicole, and today I've got a scrapbook process video featuring the softball simple sets from Simple Stories. I am also going to modify this sketch here by adding some extra photos. This is from the 2024 Spring-Summer edition of SCT Magazine. There is a section on their website where you can find a bunch of free sketches, and lately I've been kind of cruising those, making sure to print them out. And there's been some really good ones in there that I keep going back to. So I've got my photos printed. I'm going to do a quick flip through of the pattern papers just to kind of figure out what's in here. As soon as I saw this chunky stripe, I remembered that on the sketch there was those like 2-inch tall sections of pattern papers. So this was a fun find in the pattern papers themselves because this is going to be a easy swap. You'll see it here in a second. So I was pulling that up, making sure I've got it propped up on my desk where I can see it, and I'm going to go through and look through everything. I do like to pull everything out, especially in a collection, and look at everything and get an overall idea of, what all's in there before I start cutting into things. One of the reasons I chose this sketch was because when I looked at the sketch, I could kind of tell that if I moved the photos on the right up a little bit, I could squeeze in an extra entire row of photos. So I didn't change the size of the photos or anything like that. I kept them at that 3x3, and then when I trimmed them, I did leave a thin white border around the edge of everything. I just wanted to have a little bit of like visual separation between stuff. I'm going to go ahead and open the page pieces that coordinate with this and just kind of, again, I like to go through them, do like a rough sort, figure out what all is in there before I start arranging things and figuring out, where do I want to have everything placed. The thing about the simple set page kits that I like is the fact that you're getting 2 of each pattern paper, which makes it really easy to do a double page layout. I did go and pull some of the Color Vibe cardstocks, and I just grabbed I think a black, a red, like the coordinating colors, and I had set them aside as well, knowing that I would probably pull some of those to mat that photo over on the left. And I'm going to do kind of like a dry run here to see and make sure that everything is going to fit how I think it will. I'm taking a look at the pattern papers that I have, at this point, this is one of those things I wanted to make sure that I talked about in the video. When I first saw this collection, I think like most of us, we just see that yellow, the white, the red, the black, and the blue, and your first instinct is to say, well, my softball player, their team isn't any of those colors. In this case, this is my niece. I think she played 1 year of softball. She may have played 2. I can't quite remember. But her team was more like tan and navy. That was like her high school colors. I chose to ignore that, and I chose to just lean into the collection and trust the process and trust that at the end, I was going to have a well-balanced, colorful layout that was not going to distract from my photos. I think something that kind of helped was the fact that my son is wearing a red shirt, so a little bit of a cheater method there. But even if he was wearing, let's say, a white t-shirt, I think that at the end, everything still would have been fine. Sometimes when you look at things specifically like sports, you can kind of get stuck in the fact that the colors don't quite match. And my advice is to just try. Just try, and you might be surprised. I did go ahead and select the black tone-on-tone pattern paper to be the background for both sides of my layout. And I cut apart the strips on that pattern paper. I removed the black strip because with the black one, it wasn't offering me the contrast that I was looking for. I've got all that black on the background, so only having room for the 4 strips and the 4 colors, I decided to go with the blue, the red, white, and yellow. And ultimately, I wanted to keep them together, make it a little bit easier on myself, but the order of the colors, I did need to swap out a little bit. You can see me kind of going back and forth here. And basically, I'm just trying to find a color order that allows the things that I'm going to lay on top to stand out. I didn't want like the white at the top because the white frame of my photo wouldn't stand out against it, and you wouldn't like, it would just kind of get lost up there. So I settled on a color order that I felt like would work, and I'm going to go ahead and lay them out here. I did leave about a 1-inch margin over here on the right. And there's about a 1-inch margin all the way around, which, like I said earlier, the only real modification that I made was to add those 4 extra 3x3 photos. And even adding an entire row of photos really didn't affect the overall page design. There was enough room on this one that you could squeeze in that additional row of photos. I did make sure when I was trimming the strips for the left side, there are some cut aparts on the back of this sheet, and I've already used, most of the second sheet on the right page. So I just kind of cut off sections that weren't necessarily my favorite so that the cut aparts that I liked a little bit better were still available to me to use either on this layout or possibly another layout. There is definitely enough product in these to make, for somebody like me, I could probably get 3 double page layouts out of a simple set. So I think it just kind of depends on your embellishment style and your paper usage. So I'm going to bring back my photos and make sure that everything fits, everything's got room. At this point, I've left some gaps between the photos and I wasn't loving it. And I couldn't really figure out why. When I went back and looked at the sketch, I realized that the photos were butted up against each other and they just looked a lot better that way. So I think that's what was kind of bugging me. Plus, when I tuck that photo on the top behind them, you can see it like between the photos. So as I work through, I like to just kind of keep going back to the stuff that I've pulled out and make sure that I think everything's still going to fit, everything's going to work. This is the Color Vibe cardstock that I had mentioned earlier. I picked some different colors and was just trying to figure out what I wanted to bring in over here. At this point, with the pattern papers that are left, I just have like the super bright baseball pattern here, which I did use and I love it. But I needed, I don't know, I felt like I needed something to kind of ground it a little bit. So I took photos of the different options as I was like setting them up so that I could look. Sometimes seeing them on my phone helps. Sometimes sending them to a friend and asking helps. So yeah, I went back and forth and was like, let me try black, let me try red, let me try some different options. I ended up settling on this color combination here with the baseballs and the red and then a coordinating cardstock underneath. I really just wanted a solid color behind that 5x7 photo area so that the title kind of had a place to shine and any of the embellishments that I put on top of it would be able to pop out. I did go ahead and mark off how much of the pattern paper my photos were actually covering so that when I come in and do some hand stitching, I'm going to actually skip the areas where the photos lay to save myself some stitching time and also make sure that the photos adhere to my page really well. If there was hand stitching behind them, sometimes that can be just a little bit too much kind of lump and bump going on. And I'm not popping up the photos, so I just lay them out give myself like a pencil mark of how, you know, how much space they're going to take up, and I do like a couple stitches past. And I like to draw my stitching lines on, and then I just freehand the holes along that line. I've done different methods. I've tried T-rulers, I've tried holding the ruler, I've tried, you know, rulers with holes in them. I think eventually you just settle on a method and a technique that works for you and works on your personal style, and you go with that. I use a mouse pad. I don't know why that was so hard to think, to poke my holes. And again, because I've done this for so long, it's just muscle memory at this point of like spacing and stuff like that. So after I got everything stitched, I came back up to my craft room to get everything basically adhered and finished on this layout. I'm going to go ahead and attach my big photo. This is a 5x7. I print at home, and being able to print at home, I think, is the only reason I have been more prolific with my scrapbooking in the last few years, because I can pick different sizes. If I mess something up, I can just go print it again. I don't have like the bottleneck of having to wait to send out my photos. And I don't know, I can't say enough about being able to print at home. I love it. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of my photos attached. I did go ahead, and like I said earlier, I'm going to bump the photos together so that there's no gap between them. I don't really want the tucked photo visible in between the two photos below it. So I did get pretty lucky with how I trimmed my photos, that even though I kind of eyeballed the framing, everything seemed like it worked out pretty good. And I'm going to start with the larger embellishments from the page piece set. I tend to kind of try to work large to small to ensure that I have room for everything. And it was at this moment in time that I remembered that there is a 12x12 sticker sheet in this collection. I think I just had papers and page pieces in the back of my mind. So I'm going to pull off some stickers from there. I popped up that little pendant. This giant label is from the page pieces. That is basically going to be a home for my journal strips a little bit later. And I just went back and forth between the page pieces and the sticker sheet, kind of picking my favorite pieces. There was 3 softballs in the page piece set. I did go ahead and hand stitch on those. I don't normally hand stitch on die cuts. I think sometimes I just get lazy once I've done the background of the layout. That sounds so bad, but But the softballs were screaming to be stitched because in my mind, like real life softballs are stitched. So I just stitched those with some red hand stitching. I took all of the stars that were available in the page pieces set, popped those up on foam adhesive. I found this long phrase from the sticker sheet. Anytime I can tuck a phrase sticker underneath like a title, I absolutely love to do that. I think it just brings a little bit more color, interest, fun, that kind of thing. I got some more stars from the sticker sheet, and I brought in some phrase stickers to include in all of these photos just to kind of give them a little bit of interest as well. And I feel like I say this in every video, I just bounce back and forth between my embellishments until I kind of have the feeling like it's done. To me, it's kind of like seasoning your food. It's going to be different for all of us, and at some point you kind of have to say, okay, it's good. So that's usually when I say like, okay, there's nothing else I think I can add to this, so like I'm done. And it's usually when I start doing stuff like this where I start pulling things in. Like, I liked the color of the chat bubble, but it was starting to kind of feel just a little bit too bulky up there. So I swapped it out for a smaller shape in a phrase strip instead of a speech bubble. I'm going to tuck one last star in here because I can't be stopped. And apparently I'm going to add another one. And that is pretty much it. I loved working with the simple set. I was actually surprised. At first I thought, oh, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I really enjoyed this. I hope that if you haven't already looked at the simple sets, that you give them a look. And I hope you guys found this video inspiring. I hope you leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought of this double page layout, and I will be back tomorrow with some more simple stories.